Why? Because all the money in the world, I know plenty of people who had the skill and the talent to make a lot of money. But guess what? They did not have the character nor integrity to maintain that lifestyle and made one decision and lost it all. Why? Because they had no absolutes. So what you're going to do now with these 8 statements is you're going to say, I absolutely will not do this.
I think it's an important opportunity that you should take, and it's worth the cost. And we're just talking about good manhood models, and you should just take the risk. It doesn't. Manhood model doesn't necessarily have to be a father figure. Anybody close to you. It can be anybody, like your brother or something, or a friend. So really and truly, you should just find a good man-made model, and have some good company.
Models in your life to help you as a man and a better person. And as you grow up in life, it's important to have a model, and you can look out for your friends too, and help them have a model, which is you, from what you learned from your dad or uncle or coach or anything.
My wife knows, I may bend on 1,800 things, but there is a few things I'm not going anywhere. I'm not bending on it. I'm not breaking on it. Right? There's a few things they're just non-negotiable. If you don't have those as a man, if you don't have some non-negotiables as a man, and please don't miss this, then there are going to be times and moments in your life where you're going to bend when you shouldn't. There are going to be times and moments in your life where you're going to let people run over you. There's going to be times and moments in your life people are going to take advantage of you, because you just simply have no absolutes.
Great Sunday evening, everyone. So happy to have everyone streaming in with us on today. Listen, I'm Bishop Chris Johnson, senior pastor here at Zion Christian Ministries, and it is indeed a privilege to have all of you streaming into our broadcast on a conversation about COVID-19. Listen, I know for many of you who are parents, many of you who are residents here in Rutherford County, there's much unease and unrest about what we should be doing. There's a lot of unanswered questions. We're seeing stats come out every single day about COVID-19. And instead of listening and relying on the opinions of many of our local media outlets, politicians, leaders, community leaders, I thought it would be a breath of fresh air to hear advice from medical professionals. And I'm so excited tonight that I have sitting with me 2 medical professionals right here from our community. And let me introduce them tonight. First, I want to introduce Dr. Derek Johnson, who's a pediatrician and concussion specialist here with Murfreesboro Medical Clinic. And I want to say, welcome, Dr. Johnson. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And I come here today representing myself and all the different opinions and medical studies and things I've seen and read up on.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. It's a blessing to have Dr. Johnson with us. And also joining us is my friend and brother who is a hospitalist here in town, Dr. David Sellers. He is also the chief of staff here at St. Thomas. Dr. Sellers, thank you so much for being here.
Well, Bishop, thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to participate in this. And thanks for having this in general so that we can hopefully educate some people out there.
It is certainly my pleasure, and I don't want to waste time with any of the preliminaries. I know we've got a lot of ground to cover, and I know people are waiting to hear from you guys. So let's jump right in. I was reading every day. I'm getting the updates from Daily News Journal as far as the stats on COVID-19, and I wanted to kind of read these stats as it relates to our state. It says that there are 93,936 cases total. There's 967 deaths. There's 54,730 recoveries. Rutherford County itself has 3,140 new cases and 993 probable cases. So when you hear stats like this, Doc, you're kind of wondering, I know all of us are kind of wondering where these stats are coming from, how do we interpret these numerous stats that come out? When I see things like probable deaths, I'm kind of like, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. So could you elaborate on what those stats mean?
Right. Especially the probable deaths. Mm-hmm. Very few people, well, most people ultimately will end up in the hospital, and we will treat them, and we ultimately will diagnose them with COVID. And if they unfortunately pass away, then that's a known COVID death. But sometimes there are false negatives, but people, when we clinically are treating them, we know clinically they have COVID, even though our test is telling us that it was a negative. So we assume that it was a false negative because they look at just like they have COVID. Also, you may have individuals who died at home and they never sought medical help at all, but based on the symptoms from the history that was taken from the coroner's office, it was suspected or highly suspected that this individual might have had COVID. And so that's why you have these probable COVID deaths.
That makes sense.
And see, I look at it big picture. One thing is that I look at our numbers, and I look at our numbers in several ways. One, I look at our numbers compared to the states as far as the neighboring states. And right now, our mortality rate for Tennessee is 0.88%. And relative to the other states that are adjacent to us, North Carolina, Kentucky, Alabama, those mortality rates are 2.6, 1.9. So I'm a little hesitant when I kind of see numbers sometimes when I see mortality rates, because if you actually look at our numbers are traditionally lower than any other in the Southeast region. So why are Tennessee's numbers lower? So then I dig deeper into it, and Dave, you can correct me or not, but I think sometimes if you have a patient that dies that maybe had symptoms, they don't go back and test to see if they've had that or not. So my thing is the correct procedure, like they do, let's say in New York and other places, if someone dies, they will go ahead and test them to see if they're definitely positive or negative. I also look at another thing when I look big picture, and I look at the current rates that you just discussed. And so I look at Rutherford County because that's what we represent, Rutherford County. And if you look at our current situation, we are number 4 as far as the county for the number of deaths from SARS-CoV-2, which is a virus that causes COVID-19. We're number 4 in the state, Rutherford County is. If you look at the amount of cases that we have, though, we're number 3 in the state. See, I would have thought it would have been Memphis, or Nashville, and then maybe Chattanooga next or Knoxville next, but we're actually number 3. Oh, wow. So those are the things I look at when I look at stats. I look at and every county's different. I'm not saying that it's not, but those are the things I look at when I look at the numbers.
Is there a difference, Doc, from being diagnosed or someone who dies, for example? Is there a difference dying from COVID and dying with COVID? If I get in a car accident, for example, and I die, and I just happen to have those symptoms, I didn't die from COVID, I just died with COVID. Am I saying that right?
No, you're saying absolutely right. That's a very tricky question. I think that most people, when we're talking about people who died from COVID, they died from complications attributed to COVID, and not from some sort of an accident.
Right.
That makes sense.
Now, here's the thing, though. We've had patients that have been discharged from the hospital, and then because coronavirus can cause some clots and thrombus, which is basically a blood clot, they've died from that. So do you all consider that complications?
That's complications. So people have died from stroke and from heart attack because of COVID. Yeah.
We have been, 4 or 5 months into this now. When this thing first came to the United States, especially when it starts to really run rampant in our community, we didn't know much about it, and probably there's still some question marks, things that we don't know. But from your medical and professional opinions, what do we know about COVID?
Well, I think from the start, I think we know, and we can dispel several myths. We know it came from the horseshoe bat, which then went to the Asian anteater pangolin, and we also know that because at a certain fish market and the Asian anteater is a delicacy, that's where the SARS-CoV-2 virus came from. And then we went from animal to animal transmission to animal to human transmission. And because of the things that occurred in China first, we do know how to properly stop the virus. And we do know that there's several studies that have come out, but we're just following like the epidemiology of it and those things. We also know that it's also been where the Wuhan, China strain actually went to the West Coast. We know that it migrated through Europe, and then the European, it came to New York and New Jersey and the East Coast from the European entry. We also know about several drugs that are effective. We know how it's droplet, and that's how you can transmit it. We know a lot of things, but there's also more that we don't know that I would say than we know.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna emphasize that there's a lot that we don't know about this virus. This virus doesn't act like typical viruses that we would treat. Mm-hmm. Everyone, when it first came out, thought that this was just a respiratory virus like the flu. Mm-hmm. And now we know, like we were alluding to earlier, that it can cause blood clots in your system, it can cause neurological problems, it can cause, other system problems than just your respiratory system. And I think in the years to come, we'll find out a lot more, but right now there is a lot we don't know about this virus.
There's been, and I've had some members at our church be infected with the virus. One of my members called me in tears, of course, thought that this was literally a death sentence. And from what we're hearing, if you just listen to the media all the time, you would think that if you get the virus, you're dead. But obviously there's been a lot of, I don't know the exact number, but there's been a lot of recoveries. I do know in the state of Tennessee, there's been 54,000 recoveries. Right. So if you can, let's talk a little bit. Let's just kind of talk right there about treatments, if any. How are we treating it? Is it a death sentence if I get it? What are you seeing as it relates to? Because it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Oh, right.
So if we get it, what do we do?
First, that was a loaded question. So let me back up.
Okay.
So is this a death sentence? No, it's not. I mean, even the worldwide statistics and the national statistics show that there's a mortality rate of between 3 and 4% if you contract this virus. So when you think about it, people are very nervous about that 3 to 4%, but that doesn't seem like a big number. But if 1 million people got infected from COVID, that's saying that 30,000 of them would die. Now let's take the flu, where we have vaccines for. The flu, the mortality rate or the death rate is 0.1%. So if that same million people got the flu, only 1,000 people instead of 30,000 people.
Wow.
You see, so that's a big difference, and that's why the medical community, why we're so nervous about this, because it causes a lot more death than what we're used to seeing from a particular illness. They're even projecting now that this may be in the top 4 as far as when you rank deaths, the numbers of deaths for the United States for this year, if we continue to lose people at the track, that we are losing them.
Wow.
So now let's talk about treatment. Now this is very interesting because no time in my career, and I've been practicing medicine for well, I won't say how many years, but a little bit of time, have I seen treatment come out before it's really validated with studies.
Wow.
And so the first treatment, we use 3 basic treatments for patients with COVID that come into the hospital. One is going to be convalescent plasma. The studies are still pending. Does this even help with patients? We don't know. We just have anecdotal or just, Bishop got better with plasma, so we think it works. That kind of.
Gotcha.
We know that it worked with the flu of 1918, and we've noted it worked with other pandemics such as SARS that occurred before. So we're taking people that have recovered from COVID, and we are getting their plasma, which has antibodies that attack the virus, and we are letting that go into individuals that are actively having the symptoms of COVID in the hospital.
Wow.
And the theory is that those antibodies should help this person to recover. Does it really work or not? Honestly, the jury's still out. Now, there was another medication that we use, and it's a cheap medication that we've used for a long time, and it's a steroid called dexamethasone. This study has actually, in the recovery trial, they haven't published the final numbers yet, but they were so excited with what they were seeing that they just published like early results, and we started using it. And why is because with this medication, it's really the first one that we've shown that decreased death rates when we used it. So when they gave it to you when you didn't need extra oxygen, it didn't do any better than just a placebo pill. But if you needed oxygen, it helped marginally. They said that they measured you for 28 days to see if you died with COVID for 28 days. And for the people who were on the dexamethasone, 21.6% of those patients died.
Wow.
But then if you didn't, 24.6% died, which is, you think, is very marginal. But then when they looked at people that were on a ventilator, they had to be intubated. So these were the sickest of the sick with COVID-19. If they got the steroid, 29% of them died. But if they did not get the steroid, 40.7% of them died.
Wow.
So that's why we use dexamethasone, especially if you need oxygen with COVID-19. And then the third treatment that we use is an antiviral called remdesivir. Now, the studies have not been published on this, but people are very excited about it because it didn't show a decrease in death rate, but it did show a decrease in your morbidity or how long you're sick with this virus. So basically, if you were sick, they did a study and it's still being done. If you were sick for 15 days, if you got remdesivir, then you were only sick for 11 days. And so we're using those 3 treatments for people who are sick in the hospital with COVID.
Now, when you say is it a death sentence, I think we also have to bring up comorbidities. So there are several comorbidities that have been proven to lead to more mortality and morbidity.
Now, I don't know if there's anybody like me, Doc, but break that word down for me.
I'm sorry. So do you have risk factors?
Okay.
So, so the risk factors are obesity. Risk factors are if you have respiratory disease, COPD. The risk factors also include if you have heart disease.
Okay.
Risk factor also include if you have any kind of long-term illness, like let's say Crohn's or anything like that, or your immunosuppressive drugs. And in addition to that, when they start looking at epidemiology, they also have found, and this is where it was controversial, that it looks like more African Americans are more at risk, and it looks like there's more males than females. And then lastly, and the reason why we don't see it a ton, well, I'm not going to say a ton because the numbers are going up. We're seeing more and more pediatric patients test positive. But it also is based on age. Okay. So if you have, so the largest population right now that's positive for coronavirus is ages 20 through 29. So that's the population that's the highest rates. Now, as you go up in age, that's when the worsening or sickest patients will be. So starting at age like 60 to 69 kind of starts going up. 70 to 79 really starts jumping up, and then after 80 it really shoots up. So that's the reason why we're real nervous about when it gets into like long-term care facilities for our seniors.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to kids, that's the thing that's kind of crazy. It seems like, well, these kids, they're not affected at all. There was a study that was done, and it's actually on CDC's website. It's the largest study ever done so far, and it was included 50 states. And of all the cases that were positive for coronavirus, only 1.7% were kids. Wow. So if you look at that, so only 1.7% of all these patients are kids, so patients 17 and below. Then if you take and look at the average age was 11. And then if you looked at the sickest of the sick, so these kids that were hospitalized, like over 70% of them were under age 12 months. So the thing is that it's really not affecting kids as much as adults. And there's several theories out there. One of them is one of the little receptors that you see on the lungs and what you see in the nose when it comes to allergies and asthma. It seems that those kids actually have an uptick in receptors than maybe adults. There's a lot of different theories out there. But the thing is that no, it's not a death sentence, but because if you actually look at it compared to flu, the death rate is so much higher. And the fact that the virulence, which is like if I walk in a room and there's 10 people in there, approximately 4 of them will catch the virus. So, you know, it's very ferocious like that. And that's the reason why, no, it's not a death sentence, but you need to take it serious.
Yeah. So there's a when we talk about treatment, there's some people who maybe for whatever reason cannot go to the hospital or have not gone to the hospital, or they received their test and they were told to go home and quarantine for 14 days. How does that person treat themselves?
So even if they went to the hospital, those people who don't need additional oxygen, we would just watch them. Right. We wouldn't give them any treatment. Only when you start needing additional oxygen do you start getting steroids. And you don't even get remdesivir until you get above 4 liters of oxygen, which is quite a bit of oxygen to get additionally. But I would say that if those people at home, they should, because most people will, I mean, we're talking 3 to 4% of people that die. So 97% of people are going to do fairly okay with this. If they get short of breath, they should go to the hospital. Okay. If they get chest pain, they should go to the hospital. If they get blue lips or blue fingertips, they should go to the hospital. Or if they start having neurological problems like they can't speak or they can't move their arm, like they're having stroke type symptoms, they should definitely go to the hospital right away.
Gotcha. Yeah, so basically you treat it like the flu. So, because it's flu-like symptoms, sore throat, runny nose, cough, congestion, those things, and you just treat it like the flu. However, like Dave said, if they start increasing in their symptoms and maybe requiring oxygen or coming short of breath or things like that, then you need to take it serious, call 911, and get to the hospital.
I've heard this, and I know there's some people watching. Maybe you have a grandmother or a mother like mine. There's a lot of home remedies out there. One of the most popular things is the steam treatments. And I wanted to ask you guys, it's you boil the water, you put the essential oils in there, and you put all the fruit in, and you get the steam in there. Is that a good treatment?
Well, the only home treatments besides what we talked about, which is treating it like the flu, is there is a recent study out that says vitamin D might have some protection. Okay. So I know some people think vitamin C, there's a study out that shows vitamin C really doesn't have that, but vitamin D, if you take between 1,000 and 2,000 IUs a day, international units, you get it over the counter, that has some protection. But I don't know about the steam. Maybe you know about the steam treatment.
I haven't seen any studies that...
You haven't seen it in the steam treatment?
I haven't seen that.
No.
Somehow, Doc, I think all of the vitamin D, the local vitamin D sales are about to go up because you said it works. Yeah. So there's a kind of a I don't want to say scare, but there's a little bit of caution as it relates to mask wearing. You hear so many different opinions, I suppose. Should we wear masks? Should we not wear masks? Let's spend a few moments talking about the importance or the impact of mask wearing and where we should wear a mask, when we should wear a mask, because I think it seems a simple enough conversation, but I think it needs to be had. Right. So I want to ask both of you, and then with our children too, okay. When should they wear masks and how often and things of that nature?
Right. So I would say anytime you're around people, you should wear a mask, definitely. This is something that's so easy to do, and it really has benefit for people. It's like wearing a safety belt if you're driving. You're going to wear your safety belt. Yeah. You should, in this day and age of COVID, you should wear your mask. Does it protect you? The studies are mixed on this. I think it does have some minimal benefit to protect the person who's wearing a mask. But who it really protects are other people. Because as you talk, as you cough, as you sneeze, those kind of things, those viral particles, if you have them, are going to be spreading. Like Dr. Johnson just said, if he walked into a room and just was talking to 10 people, 4 of them may get it. But if he had that mask on, it would significantly reduce that spread rate. So definitely when people are around other people. Now, if you're in your car by yourself, take your mask off. Who are you going to infect? Yeah. Right? But when you get out of your car and go into that grocery store, put your mask on because you're around other people. It's so common sense types things. So Dr. Johnson, did you have?
Yeah, so, and you notice how we all have our mask here before we came up here. And as long as we're socially distanced, I think you're fine. But I think mask wearing is definitely political. It's nothing more than politics. So if I wear my mask and I have coronavirus, and if I'm speaking, you're less likely to get it than if I don't have on a mask. Okay. If I have on a mask and you have on a mask, then that actually helps you out even more. So I've been exposed to coronavirus twice. Each time in my exam room, I've had on a mask, the person's had on a mask, and I didn't catch it. So the mask wearing it's a no-brainer. So if I'm speaking to you, then the droplets, and I guess I should discuss how you can get coronavirus is either through your mouth, your nose, or through your eyes. And that's why you see some of the people that are tested wearing face shields. So if I can wear a mask to protect you, then why don't I? Well, I think the reason why you're seeing all this controversy is because it comes from our person in charge in the federal government. So if our top leaders are not wearing a mask and going, you ain't got to wear a mask, or blow it off like it's your American rights, you ain't got to wear no mask, then that's where the confusion comes. Yeah. You know, and so it's pretty simple if you think about it. My son told me in the Asian culture, you see a lot of times when they get sick, they automatically put a mask on, but it's not to keep themselves from getting sick. It's actually more to protect others from getting sick. Wow. So, you know, that's something that they have always done. So in this country, I think we need to do the same thing and start wearing our masks. Now, I know what you're talking about as far as in kids. I definitely think that kids should wear it too. So I know there was controversy about whether kids can spread the virus or not, and that's somewhat controversial too. My thing is if a child can spread RSV to another child, if a child can spread the common cold to another child, if a child can spread the flu to another child, daycares and those things, then how is coronavirus so magic that you can't spread it? Right. A kid can't spread it. So I definitely am very thankful that more and more people are starting to have their kids wear masks. And just FYI, we actually suggest kids 2 and up wear masks. 2 and below, we say don't wear a mask just because choking hazard and those things. As far as special needs kids, if they can wear one, fine. If your special needs child cannot wear one, then that's fine too. But I will tell you, I have a lot of special needs kids where they wear masks too.
Wow. And we're going to get into some of that in a broader conversation when we start talking about school. You mentioned something in your statement there. You said we can get it through our eyes, our mouth, and our nose.
And our eyes.
And our eyes. Why is it, so can you explain why we're really prompted to wash our hands so much and use hand sanitizer?
Because we always do this. We're always touching our eyes, rubbing our face. We're always doing that. So you can actually catch the virus from what we call fomites. Fomites are inanimate objects that can spread disease. So let's say, for instance, I have coronavirus and I go touch my doorknob. So then, Bishop, you come down, you come touch the doorknob too, right? And then you go and you rub your nose, then you can infect yourself. So that's the reason why. So it's been shown that that coronavirus can live on cardboard for 24 hours. That's the reason why you see some people wearing gloves when they go to the supermarket. And it can stay on metal for up to 48 hours.
Oh, wow. So that's why everybody's encouraged to clean their surfaces, and that makes sense. That makes sense. If let's jump right into this whole school situation. Now, I'm a parent, and we're all having to make some decisions here, and that's why I felt like this conversation would be good to have, because I think on August 1st, we have to make a decision on whether our children would do the virtual or the distance learning versus sending them to the traditional methods of school. So I'm going to ask both of you your opinions on that. But then, before we dive into there, what can we do just before we're leaving or our children are leaving to go to school? Because it looks like this school is opening. That's what it looks like. So regardless of our opinions of it, what can we do? I want to know for myself, what can I do to keep my kids? What conversations can I have with them to keep them safe as much as possible when they're going to school?
Well, the conversation starts from at home and the things that they need to do to protect themselves. And I didn't delve too much into this, but I have had conversations with my parents. Everything with some of my teenagers, everything you do at school, you can contract the virus and bring it home to grandma. And grandma and granddad are not going to fare as well as you are if you contract the virus. I saw somewhere where a 21-year-old went out and partied, and then after he partied, he came home, gave it to his 42-year-old dad, and his dad ended up on a vent for 42 days. Wow. So the things that you do, as far as the teenagers, the things that you do at school, whether you're blowing it off, you're thinking, and just let's be honest, teenagers, we all were there, we all think nothing can harm us. So that's just the teenager mentality. That's the 20-year-old, 25-year-old mentality, and that's why they're having all these parties still. That's why they're doing all these things, because, they think they're invincible, and that's just the way teenagers and young adults think. So, but just realize that anything that you do, you're bringing that home not only to me, if I have risk factors, but you're bringing it home to your grandparents, and that you can have bad effects from that. Now, as far as the little kids, you really need to just talk to them and just trying to tell them that, because for some of the kids, it's kind of scary. This whole thing is new. It's scary to hear all these different things. And so there is a mental health piece to it where you really have to talk to your kids and tell them, it's just, you don't want to say I kind of call it's a new way of thinking, but it's the new normal in a sense. So this is the new normal way we're going to be doing things, and it might change a year from now, 2 years now, but this is just kind of how we're going to do it. I know we used to do it this way, but this is how we're going to do it.
That makes sense. Doc, did you want to add in?
Now, that was a really good response. I'll just tell you personally, like what I've been thinking of, and I'm not a pediatrician, and I don't play one on television. But I have kids, though. They go to school. And my thinking is I feel like I am so blessed because my youngest is 12, and I have a 14-year-old. Mm-hmm. They are old enough and mature enough to do the distance learning, Yeah. I gave them a choice whether they wanted to go to school or to do the distance learning, and they both chose to go to the distance learning, which was the right choice, because had they chose the other one, they would have figured out that they really didn't have a choice. but having said that, I'm more fearful because when I work, I definitely am exposed to COVID people every day that I'm there. And so my fear is that I'm going to come home and bring it to my kids, and then they will go to school and give it to their classmates. So that's my perspective. Now, I say I'm blessed because of the age of my children, because I'm thinking if I had a 6-year-old, I don't think that they were mature enough to really do distance learning without the parent being right there with them, and who can afford to do that. A lot of people have to work and things like that. And so it's definitely a very difficult choice, but I think by giving them that advice and letting the school system socially distance the children, that I don't think it's unreasonable to send your.
Now, see, that's the crux of the matter right there, I think. So we have a digital divide here. Even though this is the United States, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, we have a digital divide here. There's still issues with racial disparities here in Rutherford County and in the country. And all those you have to take into account. So for some of us, it's easy to say, oh, we're just, learn at home, do it distant, virtual learning. But for some of our population, it's not a choice whatsoever. They have to send their kids to school because they have to work. Not only that, we still have a lot of people are surprised when I say this, but we have a large homeless population here in Rutherford County.
Yeah.
So we have a homeless population here in Rutherford County where they don't have Wi-Fi. They don't have any of those things. So how are they going to access to do distance learning? They may have a cell phone, but they may not even have a laptop. Then there's also a population of kids where they need to eat. Where do they get their food from? They get it from the school system. So it's not a simple black and white answer. And that you can have your kids stay at home, but there's a large population that can't. And that's the reason why, and then when you call me to talk about this, it's very important for those kids that cannot stay home that we protect them the best that we can. And for those counties, like Wilson County, that still, I just even looked at it, they're still, in Maury County, I heard, that are refusing to make it, or in some private schools in this county, are refusing to go along with the mask mandate. I just think they're putting those kids at risk.
And you talk about those kids that cannot afford the tools or resources for virtual learning.
Right.
Would mask availability be a problem for them as well, or?
Well, yeah, it probably will. But one of the things, if you look at CDC's website and recommendations, and one of the reasons why we haven't even opened up at First Baptist Church, where I attend, is because you have to provide tools in case people come to the facility and don't have any. So they need to have a box full of masks there, so as they walk in, if they don't have one, you can hand them one.
Yeah.
And you also have to clean in between classes. You have to keep the desks separated at 6 feet. And that's going to be pretty hard to do, especially you think of like a large school like Blackman or Siegel that's like full of students. It's going to be hard to do that. So that's why masks are even more important.
And you made mention of us sending our kids to school. There's a high majority, or I would say a high population of children who are involved in extracurricular activities. My son, for example, plays sports. TSSAA just released their plan. So this is going to be another controversial topic here. We're getting ready to have football. Doc, you're involved in sports medicine. How do you feel, first of all, and then what can we do? I'm a concerned parent. What can I do when I send my son, who, by the way, this is his senior year, so
yes,
he wants to have a season.
Yes.
What do we do to send them to
practice?
practice?
Well, it's a few things. One, I'm also, besides a concussion specialist, I'm a TSSAA football official. And so I'll pose this question as I was riding over here. I thought about this. So we're asking kids to wear the masks in daycare. We're asking them to wear masks at the Boys and Girls Club. We're asking them to wear masks in the school system. We're asking them to wear masks here, right? But then when you get on the football field, you don't need a mask. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so, and if you look at, and thank God sports is coming back, because I didn't realize how much I needed sports. But those professional athletes are in a bubble. I just read that the MLB, they're testing every 2 days, they're getting tested. Your son, if he's playing sports here in Rutherford County, he's not going to get tested every 2 days. No. He's not going to get tested at all. So the question is, and then you playing football, and me, former football player and coach too, coaches yell, they scream, they're spitting, they're yelling, they're everything else. I just don't see how safe it's going to be. I do know where I'm from in Washington, D.C. area, some of the major counties have decided not to have fall sports, or they're going to take football and flip it to the spring. One of the counties even canceled winter sports. Because, the thing is that if you're trying to truly protect the kids, and once again, we talked about kids are really not going to be that sick. It's just what happened when those kids go home. I've already had a couple of football players test positive from just workouts and obviously because of HIPAA rules, you can't publicize it and everything else. But I've already had kids on football teams test positive, and I can't call the coach and tell them, hey, this kid tested positive. It's up to the parents to tell the coach that, hey, my son tested positive, And so, if you have these kids that are testing positive and the only thing they're doing was just doing workouts before the dead period a couple of weeks ago, then what's going to happen when they start playing? Now, I will tell you, if you actually look at risk factors, though, the risk factors go up as you expand, and this even includes like AAU ball and everything else. So if you play amongst your teammates, your risk of contracting coronavirus is at a set level, right? But then if you then take those kids outside of that school and then you play other schools, your risk goes up even more. Then let's say you play kids not from Rutherford County, you play kids from other counties. Goes up even more. Then let's say you play kids from other regions, then it goes up even more. So I use this example. I was telling a parent, if my son plays AAU ball and he's playing kids in Rutherford County, let's say the Oakland area, it's not that bad as far as risk factor. But then if he goes and plays kids outside of Tennessee, it goes up. Let's say he goes and plays a team from Miami or New York City, jumps up. So those things you got to think about too.
So would it be safe, Doc, for us to say if we have students that play sports to try to restrict their, contact with older people in our communities and try to keep them at home as much as possible when they come home from school or practice?
Not only that, but I think that's just wise to do, but I think also to monitor them.
Okay.
You may want to start taking their temperature every day as a part of their regular routine and really educate them about the symptoms of COVID so that they can tell you when they have it, or you can recognize it yourself, educate yourself on the symptoms. So
Aren't you starting to see more GI symptoms too?
Yeah, we do have people that are coming in just with diarrhea and they have COVID. Yeah.
Wow.
That's one of the
So
symptoms.
is that something, is it evolving, or is that just something that's part?
That's part of it.
That's part of it.
It's always been a part of it, but we didn't recognize it because we were all so focused on this is just a respiratory illness. And we didn't think, oh, this person that just had a stroke, oh, they could have had COVID. So there's other manifestations of this virus.
Yeah, there was a study that showed that if you see is a population that we're starting to see of younger people that are having strokes and they can't figure out the reason why. If you test them, they'll test positive for coronavirus. Is that correct?
Yeah. Or the young athlete could come home and, I don't know why I don't taste the food like I used to. That's a symptom of COVID.
Loss of taste?
Loss of taste, loss of smell. Yeah. So those are things that parents really should be looking out for.
And sore throat, I think, is one of the
And
things starting
sore
to come
throat.
out with kids. And I mean, think about that when we're coming up in the wintertime, right? So kids with sore throat, runny nose, or adults with sore throat, runny nose, GI.
Which happens every year.
All the time. Colds, it's going to be hard to determine. And I don't know about adults, but in kids, fever is not one of the main, they do have fever, but that's like not one of the main symptoms we're starting to see with kids. Because remember, in general, kids are less likely to be asymptomatic than adults.
Wow.
And they could just have body aches. You're talking about the athlete. Well, you might chalk it off to them just being a hard workout or something. Or you might have some mild rhabdomyolysis.
Yep.
Wow, and so you won't know the difference.
Yeah, so it's going to be challenging for parents.
These are some additional questions as we're nearing our end here. Are we close to a vaccine?
Yes, we actually are. The efficacy of the vaccine, or how well the vaccine works, that's to be determined.
Okay.
But there are actually two studies that are in the phase 3 of their studies, which means that if they have a successful phase 3, then we can possibly have vaccines in December or January of this year.
Before the year is out.
Before the year is out, or early next year.
Wow.
Now, the one thing he didn't discuss, and I'll let him allude to it though, is that the safety of the vaccine.
Okay.
So normally it takes 10 years to go from start to finish to where we're actually giving the vaccine. 10 years.
10 years.
10 years. So we're talking about producing a vaccine in less than a year. So the president has, I guess it's called warp speed, where you have like certain phases. You have like 5 phases to go from, oh, we need a vaccine for this to production, okay? And we're doing it in less than years. So we're going step 1, step 2, but we're going to skip the other steps and go here. So for me and my patients, how safe is a vaccine? We can get a vaccine tomorrow. I'm not probably going to recommend it for my patients because of the safety issues that I worry about. Just being honest. I treat my patients as if they were my children. I tell my parents that all the time, and I wouldn't give it to my Now, if there was a vaccine that they took time and actually, had the ability to get to that point, then I would. But, developing a vaccine in less than a year, and it's called, all you gotta do is Google warp speed and coronavirus, and you'll see how, we've kind of skipped some important steps. And so if you look at the anti-vaxxers, which are people that don't want vaccines for the kids anyway, that's just giving them fuel for the fire,
Wow.
And then in addition to that, and Dave, you can allude to this, let's say we developed the vaccine. What I read recently is we don't have enough glass vials to put the vaccine in. I heard there's a shortage of glass vials for to even put the vaccine in itself.
Oh, wow.
Recently, so.
Does it have to be glass?
I mean, I think it does have to be glass. When I was on the last coronavirus call I had in my fraternity, they said we're going to be short by, I think they want I've got billion doses or whatever, and I think we're going to be short by like 1.5 million or something like that. But
Oh, wow.
But you can allude to, you think the vaccine is going to be safe, or?
That's up in the air. We are going very quickly through this process, as Dr. Johnson was saying. I will say, though, too, even if we get a safe vaccine, all they know is that this vaccine causes you to create antibodies to this virus. So we don't know if it's going to actually protect you or not. We know that it will stimulate you to get antibodies, which goes to another very common question is, well, if I had COVID before, can I get it again? We don't know the answer to that yet. We know that there are some coronaviruses, because coronaviruses have been with us for a long time. It's just this particular strain that you gave a very eloquent history of earlier in the conversation that we're not familiar with. And some coronaviruses, you can get reinfected with them within 7-8 months.
Oh, wow.
So your immunity to it is very short-lived. And so even though you get immunity with the vaccine, we don't know first of all, will it protect you? And second of all, how long will it protect you?
Yeah, so there's something with natural immunity. So that means I've gotten the disease and I've built up antibodies, and is that going to help me out? Versus artificial, which is a vaccine. So you have 2 ways to build up antibodies. You have a natural way, like say chickenpox. I got the chickenpox versus I got the chickenpox vaccine. One thing as far as the antibodies, like he said, just because you have the antibodies doesn't mean that you're immune and not going to get sick. That just means you have antibodies. So, and the antibody test is not as actually accurate as the nasal test to see if you have the disease or not. So that's something else that's coming up is that, okay, and this was controversial too and very political. All I need is the antibody test to show I got antibodies. Now I'm good. I don't need to wear a mask. That's not true. Just because you have antibodies doesn't mean you're immune, meaning that you're not going to get sick, Right. And so the other thing is that they're actually looking at now, you do know that the coronavirus is mutated. So, it's mutated. So it was a D strain, and now they found a G mutation. So now that the coronavirus is now mutated from D to G, is that vaccine going to protect for both, or is it just going to protect for D? It's like the flu. If I catch the flu once, will I get the flu again? Yes, you can, because the flu mutates.
Oh, wow.
So that's another conversation that you need to think about, the fact that coronavirus is mutating.
There's, we've been back in church since Father's Day, and we've phased back in. We've had a modified, even now we have a modified. We don't have all of our chairs out, and we're doing temperature checks at the door and mask requirements. And, as a pastor, it's, and we do have masks available. Mm-hmm. We have sanitizing stations. We have a plan developed. We're still only seeing a small percentage of our congregation back. And that's to be expected. And I don't make our members feel any kind of way. We do have means for virtual. We were doing that before. One of the questions we get all the time is I get it all the time is it safe for us to be there? Then some people comment and they say, we looked online and we saw everyone wearing masks. That was great. That was awesome. We love seeing that. One of the questions we got is it safe to attend church in person? What is your...
I would say as long as you're social distancing, you're wearing your mask, and we talked before this, and you're checking for fever with people coming in, and you're providing masks if they don't have a mask, I think you're as safe as you can be.
Okay.
I wouldn't pack a church full and you're right next to each other, but if you can afford to social distance in your church, I think you're as safe as you can be.
I'm on a coronavirus team at First Baptist, and so we have conference calls twice every 2 weeks to determine, because we're not back at church yet. And so it's safest at home, just being realistic. It's safest to be at home. But then the conversations you have is if I attend church, because there's a lot of churches that have opened up. There's some churches that they're doing no masks. I had a patient that was worried. She just had a baby, and her dad was agreed at the church, and they've decided not to wear masks anymore. And then it becomes almost like a faith question. And, we get challenged with that. Where's your faith at? And, we can delve into that a little deeper. But, I had one patient tell one of my partners that she needed to repent because of the fact that she was wearing a mask. So, you got conversations like that. But just think about this, that if I have coronavirus and I'm wearing my mask, but then I go in the bathroom and rub my nose and I touch a doorknob or something like that, and you touch the doorknob, or singing without masks,
yes.
That's just like spraying the virus. Or, like he said, if you're not socially distanced. And then you have to look at, what we're always looking at is the age factor. We got a lot of older folks that love coming to church, and that's what it is. But they really can't, because they're our highest risk population. And then I have an 83-year-old mom, and she loves attending church, but she can't go to church right now just because of her age. So that's actually a complicated question, but obviously, like we were talking about risk factors going up with sports and those things, it's the same thing. Being at home is best, but if you can't, then you have to consider the risk factor.
Doc, I again appreciate both of you sitting down with me, and who knows, those of you who are streaming in, we may have to take this up again. I'm certainly aware that these two are not out of information, they're not out of message, but we're running out of time. So I'm going to ask: is there anything you both want to leave with us today? All of the viewers who are watching in. Is there anything you would like to leave with us as rule of thumb, advice, wisdom, anything?
Let's go first.
I would just say use common sense.
Oh, without doubt.
Don't get into all this hype with all the politics that are going on. You have to think for yourself to keep yourself safe. Listen to the medical professionals. Not so much the politicians, especially if they're not listening to the medical professionals. You have to follow the science, as everyone says, and you see. That is so real. You just really have to. And if you do that, seek medical attention when you need to. Definitely just keep reading so that you can stay in the know on this, or watch the news, do what you need to do. But just use common sense is the bottom line. Yeah.
Thanks, Doc.
So to reiterate, that's actually perfect. So use common sense to protect your family. Don't listen to, say, Fox or CNN or whatever and all the drama that people like. Use your common sense to protect your family and listen to the medical professions. Also listen to the Holy Spirit when he's going to tell you the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. He's going to lead you that way. And that's the main thing I can say. Now, I do also suggest that we just have patience. You got to have patience. Things they're changing every 5 seconds. Because this is something new. We've never seen anything like this, and prayerfully, we'll never see this again in our lifetime, ever. But, you just have to be flexible, have patience. Don't go yelling and screaming at people, getting all upset and everything else. Just basically just think about this. What can I do to protect my family and to make sure I don't spread the disease? And I think you'll be fine with that.
Well, everybody, this has been awesome. I've had the precious privilege of sitting here with two medical professionals, Dr. Derek Johnson, Dr. David Sellers. And if you don't mind, drop some comments right now in the comment section. Let us know how we did. If you want to see us do this again, let us know right now. We're kind of exploring that opportunity as well. I'm not a medical professional. I feel a little bit smarter now. I've sat here with these two. I feel a little bit better about myself. But what I can do is pray.
That's right.
And so before we leave, I want to pray. And as a matter of fact, if you're watching us right now, just bow your heads right now. Father, in the name of Jesus, I thank you, Father, for these two men. I pray, God, that you would protect and cover them as they serve our community every single day. I pray that you would protect their families, Father, that you would continue to give them wisdom and knowledge, that you would bless their hands, that you would bless their heads, Father, and that you would give them, Lord, the desires of their heart so that they can be ready and equipped, God, to serve us on a daily basis. I pray for all of the patients that they serve. I pray for the families that they have to see every single day. I pray for the children, God, that are getting ready to go back to school all in our communities, all over the country. I pray for teachers and principals and all of those who are going to serve in those school buildings, coaches, Father, who are spending time with our kids, Lord. I pray that you would protect them and their families.
Yes, Lord.
I speak now, God, that you would bless every pastor who's having to pastor empty churches, some of us, who are having to find out new ways, Lord, to get the gospel out, that you would continue to give them wisdom and divine understanding. Right now, Lord, we just put it all in your hands. I pray that you would release a spirit of healing now over everyone who may be infected and affected by COVID-19. And as we continue to have these conversations, Lord, I pray that you would give us, Father, the next direction to go as it relates to these COVID conversations. But now, most of all, Father, that you would help us develop strategy to keep our families safe and our community safe. And it's now that we ask all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you, everybody. I'm Bishop Chris Johnson, and this has been a COVID conversation with Dr. Derek Johnson, Dr. David Sellers. God bless you now.